Okay, so then if I want to place beams on top of this, I'm not going to do it at level 1. You know, the architect's thinking level 1, I have beams above that. I'm going to go to level 2, and level 2 will place them right flat on there. So the next thing is to place a beam. So the beam works the same way. Before I click on beam, I'm going to go ahead and go to the insert tab, and I'm going to load a family for beams. So I'll go to structural beams, connections, foundations. So beams are going to be under framing. And then I can have steel, wood, precast concrete. What's nice is this light gauge steel, right? You can see all your angles and channels for that. Like here, my joists, studs. This is for my steel decking, right? I can do also then under precast concrete. I have all my T-beams and everything else that I'll see for concrete. Precast units. So all that's really been thought out in Revit. I find that's like really cool. When I first opened Revit, that was like the coolest thing, was I have all the stuff that I used to have to kind of draw out on a drawing. I hated drawing. It's already there for me. So I'll go to steel, and then under steel I have, you know, girders, joists, castellated beams. I have my C-channels, another castellated beam. I have my web joists. So pretty much anything you can really kind of think of out of the box is going to be there in Revit out of the box. So I'm just going to pick, you know, the Landemese is all about W sections, so let's pick some W sections here. So it'll probably be lower here. So I'll do, again, we're using welded wide flange for our columns. Maybe we'll just leave that. We'll do just W wide flange. We'll click open. And then the same type catalog gets opened with this. So I can have all various sizes of this. It's a pretty extensive text list. Type catalogs are super cool. If anybody wants to know how to do a type catalog, just let me know. I'm doing a type catalog like this for an art dealer, so they can categorize all their stuff and offer this as a product with their line. All right, super easy, worked for me. They think it's super cool and hard work. So just click OK on the first 5. Now you'll see that I have some of these already. I haven't done anything with the parameters. I'll just overwrite it. And then I'm going to go ahead and back to my structure area, and I'm going to do it on beam. And then again, I can do it on grids, or I can draw my own beam in. So here, what's nice is the old Revit never used to let you do this kind of like curved beam scenario anymore. So now what I see is really cool. Now they have the spline beam, which I'm going to see what that does. So let's click on spline. Right, so it'll actually let me draw out a splined beam. That is so cool. You used to have to make it like a sweep with it, right? Or I can do an arc, or in this case, if I want to just place a beam, I'm going to place the beam. And then I don't see the beam again, right? So again, I'll turn on my find view to see if I maybe see it there. So there's my find view. So I see it on level 2, but then I see it grayed out, so that means it's below the level. Make sense? If I want to change the properties of that beam, since I've loaded in other ones, I'm going to go ahead and just say that this is, you know, maybe that one or that one. They look kind of tiny in comparison to what I had before. We might have wanted to do the wide flange welded. Either way, it's fine. So and then at the end of this, I can drag and pull this beam, right? And if I go to 3D with it, so let's go to 3D on my beam, and I see my beam, I have these 2 markers, right? So I have 0, 0 at one end and 0, 0 at the other end. That means I can slant this beam. So if I add pitches on my beams, which we regularly have on roof areas and things like that, I could say that it's -1 foot. And that end of that beam will then pitch and slope for me. Okay? I can make the length changeable as well. It's going to go like that. Some other things that may or may not be applicable to you, if I need to rotate that beam in cross-section, I can do so as well, right? So it'll rotate that beam for me. There may be cases where that comes across. And then all the other stuff really is probably not applicable to what an architect needs it for, so we won't even talk about it. If you need to know more or have custom situations, just let me know. I can advise on that. So that's placing a single beam. Now, if I want to do the same thing I did here, again, we know the grids are driving my columns, so I would want my grids to also drive my beam system. All right, so I'll go ahead and select beam, and I'm going to do on grids again. And then again, I'm going to select all my grids, and then finish. And then really quickly, I have all my beams in there. Now, the reason why when I zoom in between the column and beam connection, what happens is within the family itself, if we were to open up a beam family, right? Revit knows or has had consultants tell them, well, you don't really ever draw the beam coming into the column, right? Because there's going to be some type of connection or some type of tolerance. So Revit by default will leave that gap open for you to allow you to make that connection, and you'll load that connection as a custom component. So you'll actually have to model what kind of connection you want. You'll model like an L channel that gets welded. Could be a gusset plate, could be whatever you want it to be. I'm not going to get into it. If you're like me, sometimes I just want the drawing to look like I want the drawing to look. I see this little grip handle. If I drag that grip handle, it should allow me to begin dragging that beyond that piece, right? So this has always been a little fine tuning, because once it gets so close, it snaps away from it, right? So again, just be aware of it. Generally, having that for my drawing is fine. You could always go into the beam family and edit it so that space isn't there either. And then if I go to 3D, I just want to double check that my beam system is loading correctly where it's supposed to go. And then if I move my grid and my level, so we'll go to elevation. Whoops. Uh-oh. Ah! Oh, Revit. All right, if I go to my elevation view, and if I move my level 2, everything is going to stretch with it. Make sense? So yeah, I don't think we needed the bottom part. Let's go to now, in between here, right, I'm going to have to load decking and other beams. So I'll need a tertiary. So we have girders, and then our actual beams. So I should have probably called those girders, right? So then we'll have our primary, secondary, and then our tertiary structure. So the tertiary structure, we don't have a grid for it, and we don't lay out individual grid lines, right? If I'm going to build a house, I'm going to lay out joists 16 inches on center. I'm not going to lay a grid line every 16 inches on center and say, I want to joist every piece here, right? The contractor is going to look at you like you're crazy. Their drawings look all mucked up. So I'm going to do something called a beam system with it, right? So I'll click on beam system. And then the beam system works, I can do an automatic beam system. So it's going to read, with the automatic system, if I have a really rectangular grid, it's really nice because it's going to begin reading my division lines. Wherever I had girders or places to fill in with the columns, it's going to start feeding that in. So I'm going to do one with the automatic, and then the other one I'm going to sketch it in. Right? So I'll just go ahead and click on automatic. And then on this one, maybe we'll do automatic. Now maybe I want to do a hurricane frame. So hurricane framing is all the beams go one way in one bay, and then I turn the beams and have them go the other way in the next bay. So I alternate that, and that's my hurricane framing. Gives a stiffer, kind of rigid system. So I'll go ahead and edit my boundary. By editing my boundary of that beam system, I'm left with these two little lines, right? So those are indicating beam direction. If I want to change the beam direction of that system, I'll click on it, and I'll select the line going that way, and I'll check, and then my framing goes the other way, right? Now, if I want to change the spacing of that, I'll go to the first one, and I'll say that I have a couple other things. I can change the size of my beam on the fly of that system. So I have one system, I have one size beam. The other system, I have a smaller size beam. I can come in and I can change my justification. So right now you'll see that it's a fixed distance of 6 feet, and it's spreading that out from the center of that bay. Well, I might want to have all my beams spaced from the end or the beginning, right? So by doing that, I pick end, so then I go 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, and then the remainder's taken care of. Or I can do it by fixed number. Generally, I think of things in fixed number because we're designers, we're not engineers, right? So we're trying to make everything perfect and evenly spaced as we're designing. So I always do mine by fixed number, and I tell it how many numbers I want. Same thing here. We'll do fixed number. And I'll try and get my spacing between these to be the same if I can. So that's the automatic beam system and how they work. Now to sketch a beam system, so let's say that, you know what, I know I'm just creating a drawing and that these are going to go through and make my drawing. I want my beams, so I'm just going to do it all in one shot, right? I do that all the time. I go to structure, do beam system again, and I'm going to sketch it out. So I don't want you to read this automatic system. I want to sketch out my area, and I'll select from that side all the way to this side. And I can even lock that then to those grid lines, so if they move. And then I'll take my beam. I want my beams to go the other direction, so I'll select and check that. And then I'll click check. And what that'll do is it'll just ignore that and fill in my beams. Now what's nice too is it's going to feed in, when I do the sketch, it's going to feed in this tag. So as an architect, you're really not going to deal with structural drawings where we're tagging those. So I would go to my visibility graphics, and I go to annotation categories, and in most cases I would say that my structural tags are off for this. We're not tagging anything yet in this class. So say structural tags are off. Didn't turn them off. That's one more time. What else is on here? You know, while I'm here, I'm just going to turn off all structural tags. Wow, there's a lot in there. Click apply, click OK. So then I'll turn them off. So you can see if I'm not really aware of or don't really care at this, I'm trying to think of the whole thing as a system in one set. And I know because I'm designing it that, yeah, I'm going to tell them to cut the beam off right there and put another one in. Or the contractor is going to look at it and say, yeah, I'm not going to get a beam 200 feet long. Right? And then I would just say that my number is going to be whatever I had, what, 6? Whoops. Yeah, so there were 6 there. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is 42 beams. And it fills in my beams really quickly. Right? So the only reason why I avoid this sometimes is because you end up with cases like this where if I'm not accurate with my math, so I think I probably need 43. Each one of those I need an extra one, I think. Something like that. So you'll want to adjust it so it looks right. Oh, 433. No. Haha. Welcome to waiting. See how good my computer is today. Haha. Whoa. Haha. Nice. They actually fit everyone in there. Okay. So that gets me to somewhere. That's close. Okay, so then we treat it as, if I wanted to lay a floor, right, then I would be laying my floor into there, so on and so forth. Some other things to think about now. Let's go ahead and, let's talk about braces. So when I have a system like this, I need to brace at least one bay. I'm either going to have a concrete core if it's a high-rise, and then I have my stair cores, and then that's going to brace for lateral bracing. So anytime we do a brace, it's for lateral load. So you think of the tree, right? The tree has a root. That tap root goes all the way through the tree, right? I don't want my tree blowing over, right? So that's our lateral bracing for a tree. High rises work the same way. Or if it's a low rise, in this case, you think of like M&M. When I go over to M&M, one of the bays in M&M has the X bracing in it. So that's lateral bracing for the building, okay? So I'll come into my north elevation, and I'm going to take, or north or east, doesn't matter. And I'm basically going to take all this and I'm going to array it up. So I'll take all of my system, and I'm going to do my filter and say that I have not my grids, not my levels, but everything else I'm going to apply and select. And then I'm going to go ahead and save my selection as structure. And then I'm going to group it if I can. So the group buttons create group. And I'm going to call it, no, don't do that. So why I can't group it is because it's pinned. So I've deselected that. So if I don't want to do that selection again, I just select a couple things. Click on load selection, structure. Click OK. So that reloads my structure, and then I want to make sure I deselect any extra elements that I selected. And then I'm going to type UP for unpin. So now I've unpinned those elements. So those were pinned to specific items in geometry. That pinning deals with the beam system. That beam system, now I should be able to move my beams within that. And so they're not evenly spaced. I can have abnormally spaced in case I need to put a hole in the floor or anything like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do an array with it. And it's not going to let me do that either. It's most likely why I can't do this like this is because I'm going to, because those things are so tied to the level and to the grid. So it says structural element will be detached from grids due to inconsistent group membership. So actually it's just telling me that it's going to detach it from the grid. So I'm going to say, yeah, that's fine. Hey. And then in this case, I do want to group and associate that because I want all my structure at each level to be part of a group. And then I'm going to still leave it as move to second. I'm going to click and drag up to the next level. And I'll just do 2 for now. And then, so I don't bog down my computer, but I really need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them. Uh-oh. There we go. 8. And then I should have my structure for this building almost situated pretty quickly. So what, 20 minutes? Very quick modeling. There we go. So there's my set. Then if I go to 3D, hey, rock and roll. Structure. All right, very quickly. So I did a whole building, beams, columns, girders, everything in one shot.